Okay. What's going on, y'all? Rap Geeks is back. Playback appeal in the house.
No, 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 no,
Oh,
no.
what?
Today
What?
we are the Soul
Ooh,
Geeks.
that's right. So let's change our voices up. What's up, y'all? Welcome to Playback Appeal Channel. We are the Soul Geeks. Today, we will be we'll be bringing y'all one of the smoothest, one of the coldest, most expressive neo soul artists of, I'd say, the last generation. And generation in music terms nowadays is probably about 20 years, 25. Would you agree with that, Sean?
Yeah, I would say 20 years.
Yeah. So of this generation has, I would think, set the path for a lot of R&B artists coming out nowadays, and has spread the tradition of what we all know is, jazz and bebop and hip hop and soul music and Philadelphia, you know, band R&B, you know what I mean? So we're going to get into the songs later, but I got to just call this out. Um Sean doesn't really listen to a lot of R&B music. He'll listen to some soul, you know what I mean? He'll get into some Al Green, he'll get into some Marvin Gaye, you know what I mean? He'll get in there, but in the new R&B bag, this definitely was something else for you, I'm assuming.
I've heard the album before, but we haven't even talked about what the album is. Can
Well,
you just introduce the artist and
okay,
the album?
okay, Pushy. So, all right, so this is the part I don't like. But this is Who is Jill Scott? Words and Sounds Volume 1. This dropped in July 18th, 2000, exactly 20 years ago. All right. So this is older than some of y'all women out there that a lot of my homies are trying to get with. No, I'm joking. I don't got pedophiliac homies, but if you do, you're not the homie no more. Anyways, let's get back into the album. So yeah, this album dropped 20 years ago, man, and I think it's definitely one of the most it's probably one it's my in my top 5 of neo soul classics. You know what I mean? So this album dropped on Hidden Beach label. All right. I don't know what that is. I need to actually dig into that. I mean, if this album dropped on that, I'm sure it'd be some other
They're
hits on
under
there.
UMG.
UMG? Okay. For sure, for sure. So this album, I don't even think it won a Grammy, but it was nominated for R&B album of the year in 2001. But damn, I wonder who it lost against, man. That's interesting. Um okay. So all right. Jill Scott's debut album um came out in 2000. What are your first thoughts coming into this as a non R&B head or soul head?
Well, I can't say I'm a non R&B head, right? But
Okay, you
like
listening to Usher?
I'm listening to Brent Fayez,
Okay.
I'm listening to,
Bias.
Fayez. I'm into that. I'm into the Magic Jordan, if you would call that R&B. I you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
I'll call the OVO Toronto scene
Snow Allegra?
R&B. It's okay. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's okay. That's okay.
Ooh,
I'll
fucking angry right
It's not
now.
something I go back to. It's not something I go back to, but I would say this is different, man. Like the way I would call this kind of R&B, right? Like the Anthony Hamiltons, the Maxwells, the Angie Stones, the Jill Scotts. I kind of see them as like a neo soul
Right, as opposed to
R&B.
okay, what about Erica? Where do you put her?
Actually, that's a very good question. I think Erica, well, Soulquarians, right? They were kind of their own thing.
Right.
I think Erica. I mean, I love Erica Baidu, and
Baidu. You work in tech. I know. You said Baidu.
Baidu, Baidu,
Hey,
the
we get
Chinese
it.
tech
We get it,
company,
bro. You work in
Erica
tech, all right?
Baidu,
Baidu, sure. Go ahead.
Badu,
Badu.
Badu,
Badu. Badu. Badu.
Erica
Yeah, go
Badu.
ahead.
I mean, her stuff is phenomenal, man. Don't get me
Right.
wrong. Like Lauren Hill, it's a whole that whole thing. She's so creative. She's almost like the Sade
Right.
meets the who's that one girl from Iceland, super famous Icelandic artist. You know what I'm talking
I
about?
don't. Go ahead. Look it up.
Bjork. I'm talking about
Bjork? Okay,
Bjork.
yeah, for
She's
sure.
almost
Right.
the Bjork
Right.
of the
Mm,
R&B soul scene. So I think she's on a whole nother
right.
level.
Okay, I'm with you.
But
Go ahead.
I can see how Erica Baidu and Jill Scott, they come from maybe the same
Right,
influences.
right. So here's the thing about all the artists you just listed. We're talking Erica, Jill, and there's only a couple of Music Soul Child within the neo soul space that is very close to hip hop. There's a big difference between having it be some kind of like smooth jazz track, um, or even just a regular old R&B joint versus it being pretty much hip hop. And Jill Scott and Erica do it the best, in my opinion. It's You can tell the deep influences from maybe like a bebop, jazz, and a hip hop. Neck breaking. I would say some kind of Dilla feels as far as the rhythm goes. But they're actually playing acoustic instruments as opposed to sampling drums. And Jill brings in her hip hop, soul, and even opera. You can hear and it she shows off her range in every single one of these songs, and she's definitely good on the opera tip. Ooh, I mean, she goes off. You know what I mean? What
Right.
song in that? He loves me or some. What's the name of that track?
Yeah,
Um,
you're talking about I believe the one that even Beyonce did a cover
oh,
for,
word.
which is "He Loves
Yep.
Me." Yeah, it's a song that she dedicated to her husband at the time,
Mm.
Liza Williams.
Oh,
But I get your point, man. I get your point. For me, I see Jill Scott as more of a Maxwell. I
right.
see I see Lauren, I mean not Lauren Hill, Erica Badu as more of a D'Angelo.
Mm. Right.
Cuz it's about I see there's just so much more versatility to a Erica Badu.
Right, right, and I
Bec-
mean, shout out Erica Badu. She definitely influenced Andre 3000, which we pretty much had 25% of a podcast that wasn't supposed to be about him. And-
on the previous podcast, if you guys listen to that, we just did one on Big Boy.
right, right, yeah, but yeah, shout out to Erica, and I feel you exactly on that. It's almost like they can be R&B if they want. They can be whatever. Erica bounces between Africa Bambaataa vibes back to Houston, all the way back to what we would call neo soul. You know what I mean? Whereas Jill Scott, she sits in her bag, which I would say is, what the kind of, how would you say that? The spoken word poetry, jazz. I'm assuming this was kind of the vibe in Philly. We seen this type of style in a lot of Hey Arnold commercials. You
Yeah,
know what I
with
mean?
the
Us being from
Roots.
Cali, we our jazz, we never really had a deep jazz influence on a lot of our rap music. But in the East Coast, I think jazz was a heavy influence in a lot of those rap and R&B music. And Jill Scott, I think, is the epit.
I mean, I don't know, man. Terrace Martin,
Yeah, I mean,
Kamasi
but that's
Washington,
new
is that
stuff.
not
I
LA?
w-
Is that not LA?
I'm saying we would have to look at early 2000 music, right? And look at what the game was rapping to beats on. You know what I mean? And even who was another LA rapper earlier before him? I mean, we're talking the whole DPG and all of them. They weren't rapping on do 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 do. They weren't rapping on
Where's the
anything
Far
like that.
Side from?
That's LA. I mean, that's
Right.
jazz too, and that's a whole separate subset of LA rap music, but it wasn't the commercial LA rap music. The commercial East Coast music for sure was more on the jazz side of things.
Right, A Tribe Called Quest
Right.
for sure.
Exactly, exactly.
Gangstar, they love the sax.
Yep. Yep, yep. And and so
Big L, yep.
exactly, exactly. And this album, man, I love this album a lot, and Jill Scott really does a great job of sh- this album, and I would even think Jill Scott as an artist is to me the epitome of self-expression. And next to Erica Badu in the way that they're not just singing love songs. They're not just singing love songs. You know what I mean? They have real situations. They're taking obviously we're all talking about love here, but they're taking specific topics with around the conversation of love. She literally has a song dedicated to conversing with somebody to get to know them while you're dating. You know what I mean? A long walk. That song is literally just about let's talk about, you know, uh Let's take a long walk around the park after dark. Find a spot for us to spark conversation. That whole song is pretty much just about getting to know each other. Whereas most R&B tracks is just, okay, we got to know each other. Oh, I love you. Oh, let's make love.
I mean, Alicia Keys has kind of done that too.
For sure. And so that's what kind of separates these people from most R&B divas, what a lot of people would say. I mean, and even R&B artists, music soul child is another next to Maxwell of those male neo soul artists. But I do
And a Raheem Devon,
yeah, yeah, stuff like that. I mean, he wasn't he talking about coming out of prison or something? Or wait, no, I'm talking
bro.
about somebody else. We talking about somebody else. Never mind. I think I'm talking about Raheem. I
Might
think
be talking about DMX for all I know.
Oh. But yeah, I really appreciated the expressionism that this album really like. I think it's focused heavy on the spoken word side of Jill Scott, and I appreciated that aspect of it. I don't get to watch too many shows like that, but I think that's probably one of the most interesting aspects of it. She's silly on on some of these songs, and so that's what I really appreciate about this album is the most is all this self expression that went down song to song. And so I gotta ask you, Sean. I don't know if you're really in tune with your feelings and stuff, man. But did anything like spark up for you? Did any old flings come up while you were listening to this? Did any lesson you learned in your lifetime come up as you were listening to this?
You know, I'll say this: when women make R&B music, that demographic they're going for is for women. When men make R&B music, the demographic goes either for the guys or the women. It's either the process of courtship where they're trying to, mac on some hoes,
Sure.
or it's the process of talking about how they got their heart broken, right?
Right.
And guys kind of going through that process. But when women make R&B music, I usually don't get the feeling that it's relatable for me personally. Like I can see, like, think about this, like a SZA, the Control album. When I was hearing that, a lot of that music is like things that I really cannot identify with, like
Right.
talking about how you cheat on your guy with his best friend. Like that makes me very uncomfortable as a listener,
Right.
having to you know be okay with the reality. But no, the answer is no. It didn't spark any feelings in me personally. But what I do appreciate is that this album is an album for the everyday woman and what she goes through. It's not the album for the model IG girl who has 17,000 DMs, 5,000 Tinder messages. It's the album for just a regular run of the
Right.
mill girl
Right.
and who maybe doesn't who has these regular
Right.
thoughts about going for a walk, about the process of courtship, about how she feels. And I gotta really respect that Jill Scott has that authenticity of being able to relate to normal
Yeah.
everyday people
And
in that regard.
it's key that you bring that distinction up. In the conversation of divas in music, for the most part, we as an industry tend to sexualize them. And it is the template of that type of artist generally is they imagine like a Cassie album, right? It's a highly
Right.
sexualized that's a highly sexualized artist, you know what I mean? And
Like Kelly Rowland, yeah,
sure,
like I
right.
there's there's a lot of sexual
Right.
imagery in
And you
that.
gotta give it up to people like Erica and Jill Scott, that can really drop music in their own way, full creativity, don't have to show a thigh, don't have to show anything, don't even have to sound provocative, and can be weirdos on their albums, and I respect the hell out of that. Um and that's key. And so yeah, I guess you could say this album, that's a good take. I'll take that. This is for the everyday woman.
It's for the everyday woman, and it's there for the everyday woman. And this album has no body shame to it.
Mm. Yeah, you know what? I mean, it's the way the lyrics are written, I think I think, it leaves enough imagination for the listener to design what this person looks like in this situation that she's creating in the song. You
Right.
know, it's not no thick thighs, big ass, ass, make a whip laugh. I mean, that's I don't even know if that's a real comparison, but you know what I mean? It's like you gotta look a certain way, and they explicitly talk about these
Yeah, it's
things.
not a very hypersexualized album,
Right.
and I think this is where the lineage of the Gloria Gaynors come from.
What is that?
The Gloria Gaynor,
Describe that.
the singer. I will survive.
Okay.
I will survive. Right. This is the lineage of maybe more of the Supremes.
Okay, sure, yeah.
You know, it's coming more from that Motown,
Yep.
and so it's not Motown, right? It's Philly, but it's also soul. But yeah, I appreciate this album for what it is, and and especially the album that came after this. I'm a big fan of that one. Um, I've heard this on a vinyl. I've heard that one. The first two Jill Scott albums I've heard on vinyl, right? And I appreciate it, but it's just not something that me personally that I'm always fiending for. This kind of sound.
Right, right, yeah.
But that's just
Yeah,
me,
yeah, and
right?
and I can imagine that. I mean, you grew up off of rock music, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And I think your formative years was all 808s, thanks to Lex Luger or some cats like that.
And Skrillex.
Skrillex, sure, yeah. Shout out to what's his real name? Yeah,
Sunny
Sonny.
Sunny
I
Sunny
I
Moore.
used to I used to kick it around a cat that like would refuse to call him Skrillex, would just feel like yeah, calling him Sonny as if like they're fucking buddies. But anyways. Um yeah, that's interesting, man. You know, I'm glad we got to do this. And if this wasn't one of your most favorite albums to go through, I'm sorry, but I'm just honored to have to to at least talk about this album because it does mean a lot to me personally. A couple songs that I can highlight that I think everyone should check out is
Definitely.
A Long Walk, He Loves Me, um, The Way. I really appreciated that joint a lot.
I
Jesus
like Do
Christ.
You Remember?
Really? Okay, okay. Interesting.
Mhm.
Interesting. Honey Molasses. If you caught that, I appreciated the beat, just the sounds used on that album. Super psychedelic to me. If that's the right song I'm thinking about. And so yeah, check those songs out. What else stood out to you?
Yo, the one thing that stood out to me is that she's even better live
Right, right.
than she is on recording. Like
Mhm.
Jill Scott is commemorable enough where I would want to sit in a sit down venue for an orchestra to hear her voice
Yep, yep.
live because she's gonna do what she's gonna hit that live just like the Luther
Yep.
Vandrosses, just like the Teddy Pendergrasses, just like the Marvin Gayes. Like, I know she's gonna hit it live, and she's gonna be holding some very high operatics that are very much going to be appreciated. So,
Yeah.
would love to see Jill Scott live,
It's
man.
not a lot of artists where the live show is just as good as the recording, and if not better, because of the freedom of just being live. They can improvise and add some more flavor to the song. Jill Scott is great at that. Erica and even Chance is super good at just seeing the live version of a song, having it be different, feel different, but still be just as good or better.
Yeah, and lyrically, Jill Scott is a good songwriter because she's writing these lyrics from the perspective of the afro hair, minimal makeup, sweats on, talking about just little small details like the way he smells,
Mhm.
like the way his voice sounds. Just like certain things that, as men, we don't get into those details. So, very appreciative that an artist like Jill Scott
Well, see, here's the thing.
was
I
around.
don't want to say, man, we don't get into those details. I think that's in the spoken word poetry spirit to be so graphic verbally, right? And I have a huge soft spot for anybody that can do the spoken word poetry. You know, I mean, I love watching that stuff, and I think
So this is different than slam, right?
slam poetry sounds corny. I have no clue what that could be. I mean, it sounds like it could just be an open mic, but there's a specific style of what when you say spoken word poetry, a lot of people like to think that you might want to talk like this and then start talking fast and then go back into normal speech, right? It's just there's that
And then you go back up and then you talk like
Right.
this and
Right.
then you're back
And then Jill will come
down.
in, she usually stays on his neck, his
Right
sweat. We made
here.
love, right?
Yes.
And so that's that style, and I appreciate the hell out of that style. And I think I attribute Jill Scott to really opening my ears to that style of spoken word. Um, so shout out to her, man. We love you, Jill.
We love you,
Yeah,
Jill.
man. So overall, for this album, y'all check out A Long Walk, He Loves Me, The Way, Honey Molasses. What did you say, Scott? I mean, whoo, I called you Scott. Shout out to Aaron Scott. That's the homie, man. And Jill Scott. Are y'all related? I don't know. I hope y'all are.
Is
Um,
Travis Scott in this too, or Scott Miscuddy? Jill Scott should join the Scots, bro.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. She should be in that music video too. Nobody in what game was that? Nobody in Fortnite
Uh,
knows who Jill Scott is.
Fortnite.
So who is Jill Scott? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what they would be asking. But
That's
those
something you
who
gotta.
know real music would not be asking who Jill Scott is because this album is one that if you love hip hop, you love R&B, you love your mom, you'll listen to this album.
Your
Um,
girlfriend might appreciate it too
yeah, your lady might
when she's
appreciate
on
it.
her period.
That part, that part. So thank y'all again. It's the Soul Geeks in this bitch, playback appeal in this bitch. My name is Aaron.
My name is Sean.
Thank you for listening. And in the words of Al Green, love and happiness.